Financial leadership is changing. CFOs no longer record history. They make history. This podcast will help you become a better leader, strategic thinker, and digital visionary. Welcome to Secrets of Rockstar CFOs, the ultimate podcast for chief financial officers. Follow along as Jack McCullough engages in exciting chats with accomplished CFOs, learning how they overcame obstacles and positioned their companies for the future. Here's your host, Jack McCullough.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs. We're going to have a fun guest today. My guest is Todd Crane, who's the CFO of Domo. Domo provides a cloud-based data and AI platform that helps deliver smart, data-driven decisions. From real-time data integration to custom apps and data products, Domo is designed to generate measurable value across in real time to any employee, any team, and any company. Todd, welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs.
Thanks, Jack. Really happy to be here.
Thanks. And one of your colleagues wrote the company description, but how did I do? And maybe you can give a more thorough and detailed overview.
Yeah, no, that was great. Actually, I was very impressed. For a minute, I thought that was just you, your organic knowledge of Domo coming through there. But no, my team did a fantastic job with that. Yeah, I mean, Jack, as you know, data is just critical in today's environment, and our product helps people get that data wherever it lives in their company, bring it all into one place, cleanse it, combine it, create actionable insights, create meaningful views of that data that can be used by everyone in the organization to drive results. So it's a product that I've used extensively over my time here at Domo. I'm passionate about it. I've worked a lot with our customers, and I've seen how passionate they are about it. So it's really an honor to be CFO of a company where I actually have hands-on experience with the product, and I've seen firsthand the value that it can bring.
No, that's fantastic. And yeah, I think the expression I heard, it was actually from one of the sharks from Shark Tank, said data is the new oil. I'm not sure if he invented it, but I heard it from him. And yeah, that's very true, right? It's, how many companies can exist without data? So, we'll definitely want to explore Domo later. But first, a little bit about your own background. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in a small town in southern Idaho. I grew up on a potato farm. We also raised sugar beets, wheat, barley, and a few other crops. We had about 1,000 acres that we ran growing up, and it was just really a fantastic way to grow up. I loved my childhood. With it being a family, it's essentially a family business. My dad was an entrepreneur. It just so happened that his business was farming. He worked with his father, so my grandpa and my uncles, they all worked together and kind of shared equipment and shared resources, but they all had their own land. But to be able to go to work every day, with my dad and my uncles, my grandpa, and work on the farm, I mean, it was really just a fantastic way to grow up.
That's fantastic. And interestingly, you're probably about the 60th episode. I'd say it's surprising to me. You're like at least the sixth person who grew up on a farm, which I guess because I grew up in the city, I find surprising. The work ethic would certainly serve a CFO well, but what's particularly interesting, about 4 or 5 episodes back, one of the CFOs actually grew up on a potato farm.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's
I probably know him.
In Idaho, to be clear. So I'm not sure who it is, but when we go off, I'm sure Jess will be able to help us with that. So, but it does sound like a fun upbringing, and it's great that you were able to spend that time with your family. And growing up on a farm and being involved in a family business with an entrepreneurial dad, does that impact how you approach your career today?
Absolutely. In fact, that's what I credit my career choice to. As a kid, being part of, the family business and, occasionally being part of meetings where my dad would meet with his brothers and his dad and talk about bills and who's going to pay what. And, just the finances of the whole operation was always very intriguing to me. I knew he took out a big operating loan every year. It's kind of a big bet, right? You take out that operating loan, you plow it into the ground, you plant your seeds, you pay for fertilizer and water and labor and all of that stuff, fuel to cultivate and grow those crops. And then it's kind of just hope that the commodity prices and weather and all those variables that are outside of your control pan out so that you can, be able to pay back that loan and have some money left over, obviously, at the end of the year. But that whole, financial aspect of it, which my dad actually didn't speak about a lot, was always intriguing to me. And I wanted to understand it, and I was so curious about it. So when it came time to go to college, I just naturally went toward business and then went toward finance. And then I went to BYU just down the road here in Utah. They have a really, really good nationally acclaimed accounting program. And once I learned more about the accounting program, I thought, hey, I took a couple accounting classes. I liked it. And I thought, hey, if I like it, might as well get into the program and go into a career as a CPA. And so yeah. So my upbringing on the farm and being part of a family business definitely influenced the path I took with my career.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, BYU definitely has one of the elite accounting programs. You're amongst the first. You actually stayed all the way to get the master's degree in accounting.
Correct.
Does Utah or Idaho, do they have that requirement that you have a master's to be a CPA?
Yes, Utah does. I'm not familiar with Idaho's requirement, but yeah, for Utah, you are required to have a master's.
Yeah, it's they're trying to make it a little bit easier than when you and I got ours, and it's just they're trying to make the profession a little bit more attractive to young people because it's not as sexy, I guess, as it was when you and I started our careers. So, but great. So I want to chat. It sounds like your first job, other than you worked on the family farm, but your first job when you graduated, you were with EY,
That's correct. Yep.
and that was you were there about 5 years.
Yes. Yes, I was.
And what was that like? What type of clients did you work on, and how did that prep you for Domo?
Yeah, so I started my career with EY here in the Salt Lake office, which is, comparably speaking, one of the smaller EY offices. And generally, in the Big Four world, these smaller markets like Salt Lake, you end up with a little bit more of a eclectic group of clients. It's if you're in the Bay Area, it's all tech, and if you're down in Texas, it's all oil and gas, and maybe if you're back east, it's more financial services. So Salt Lake, it was a little more of a combination of a lot of different industries, which I actually enjoyed and I was excited about. I had clients ranging from a company called Energy Solutions that handled disposal of like low-level radioactive waste. And we're talking really, really low-level stuff. But they had a big landfill out in the middle of the desert in Utah where they would dispose of that waste.
Does that explain why you have 3 years?
What's funny? You do inventory counts when you're a young staff auditor, right? That's one of the assignments you get. It's kind of part of the paying your dues, if you will, right? You get sent out to do these inventory counts, and a lot of times they're on like New Year's Eve because it's the last day of the fiscal year. But anyway, I got to go out to that landfill and count inventory, and I'm looking at these barrels. They'd have like one barrel like roped off. And they're like, don't go past that rope. And I'm like, trust me, I'm not going past that rope. But I was in full on like hazmat suit. I had like a Geiger counter like on me to track how much radiation I was exposed to. So they checked me like in and out and made sure I wasn't exposed to too much radiation. And definitely, I think one of the more unique inventory counts that you could probably be involved with as a young auditor. So anyway, that was one of my clients. I had an oil and gas company, natural gas company that's a utility here in Utah. Had some tech clients, Qualtrics, which is another tech company here in Utah. That was one of my clients. And then a few others. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed having a broad experience set with those clients.
Yeah, I mean, I recommend, and I work with a lot of early career professionals that, to college students, like, hey, if you're not sure what you want to do, public accounting is a great way to help figure it out. You'll, make a good living. You work with some tremendously smart people, and you'll just be exposed to so many different processes and people and industries. And, it's certainly for accounting, I think it's the best way to start your career. It's certainly not the only way, but I just think it's the best.
Yeah,
way.
absolutely. Not the only way, but I agree completely. I mean, the network that you build is incredible. Your coworkers at your firm are, they all end up spreading out and going to other companies. So then you end up with this sort of like organic network of people that are all over the place. But not only that, but all the clients you interact with, like you said, the different people at all these different companies that you're auditing, you build relationships with them as well. So to have that strong of a network, that broad of a network, that early in your career is extremely valuable.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have an undergrad degree and a master's degree, and great networks, both the alumni networks, but they can't compare, for professional growth I worked at KPMG.
Okay.
You
Same
can't
thing.
compare to the KPMG network, and I'm not knocking anyone. I'm very proud of both the schools I went to, but if you getting a job or just staying connected to the Boston community, there's nothing for me like KPMG.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. At this point, CFOs up and down the, see I-15 behind me in the background here. There's a number of software companies up and down I-15 where I know have good relationship with the CFO, all stemming back from my days at EY.
No, that makes a whole lot of sense. So you left EY after about 5 years, and it was right to Domo. Is it a client, or can you tell us how you came across the Domo opportunity?
Yeah. So after about 5 years, I the experience I got at EY, tremendously valuable. I think each year in public accounting, I don't know how many years that's worth in normal years, but it's worth a lot. It's a lot of hours, it's a lot of work, but you learn so much. So my time there definitely set me up for success later in my career. But as I got, to that point, I realized, auditing's great, but it's not my passion. And I didn't necessarily see myself doing auditing the rest of my career. And I started to look around, and I'd had, as I mentioned, Qualtrics as a client. And so I had some exposure to kind of that SaaS community. And at that time, all the, the perks, the food, the, kind of all that kind of casual office environment was sort of new and exciting. And that appealed to me. And not only that, but I mean, the margins in software are tremendous. It's the recurring revenue model is really powerful. There's just a lot of things about that industry that interested me. So once I decided I wanted to start looking outside of EY, I kind of had that software lens on, and I applied for a controller job at a smaller software company. And once, one of my mentors at EY, once he heard I was applying, he said, no. If you're going to apply, you need to go to Domo. Domo's a unicorn. You need to go, I know they have an opening right now. So he actually helped me get an interview. They'd already selected a candidate. They hadn't given him an offer yet, but they'd selected someone. But I was able to kind of sneak in and get an interview last minute. And luckily, they ended up choosing me to take that role. So yeah, rest is history. Still here.
That's a great story. Perhaps not so much for the other candidate, but so no, that's great. And Domo. First of all, I think people who aren't from Utah tend to underestimate what an innovation hub it is. I mean, it's none of us are Silicon Valley, but just in terms of creating new and important businesses, it's up there with anyone really.
So. Yeah. No, we, Josh James, our CEO, was, one of the kind of founders of the idea of Silicon Slopes, rather Silicon Valley and Silicon Slopes here in Utah. And it really has become a very meaningful tech hub in the nation. I was actually looking at a graphic the other day on LinkedIn. Somebody had posted, it was number of unicorns per 100 billion of economic output or something like that. And it was, very clearly California and Utah stood out, well above a lot of the other, states in the country. So yeah, it's been exciting to see that continue to grow.
Well, as a lifelong Bostonian, I'm not really thrilled with that little bit of information, but I'm not surprised. I have deep admiration for what you've accomplished, just within the course of my lifetime, really. So, and, no one thought of Salt Lake or Utah that way, at the start of my career. So I want to, sticking to Domo a little bit, you came in, you've had about a 10-year run and grew into the CFO role, contributing a lot of different roles. But I'm curious, if you could take us through that journey, maybe some of the important mentors that you had along the way and lessons learned that help you, get ready for the CFO role when it became available.
Absolutely. The gentleman who hired me here was VP of Finance at the time, just a tremendous mentor for me. He taught me so much about, financial reporting. The role I started in here was manager of financial reporting. We were getting ready to go public at the time. And given all my experience with publicly traded companies from Ernst & Young, they were very, wanted me in that role to help them prepare the S1 and be ready to do the, Qs and Ks beyond that point, all the SEC filings. But he had done that role in kind of a past life. So he kind of grown up through the same track that I was on. And his mentorship was extremely valuable in terms of teaching me the ropes on how to do reporting and what kind of reports we need in the accounting system and how we take those and put them over here and what the format of the report should be and what to watch out for and how to handle different things, how to build processes, all of that. So he was an incredible mentor. But because of my deep involvement in the IPO process, so I came here in 2015. We ended up going public in the summer of 2018. But leading up to that, of course, there's, everything we did on the accounting team was with an eye toward that IPO, making sure we had robust processes, that we had very strong cutoffs on our quarterly reporting, which when you're private doesn't really matter as much, but we wanted to make sure we had nice, clean cutoffs and we were practicing that cadence and that discipline and rigor that you need to have to be public. But as I was just right in the middle of the S1, which is a huge document that just an insane amount of work goes into from both, our side, the bankers, the, outside counsel, we all work together on this document. It just gave me a really great kind of bird's eye view of the company. So I felt like I could see the business through the lens of like a banker or see the business through the lens of an executive. But then I also knew from the bottom how all those numbers were bubbling up and getting calculated, reported, and getting into the document as well. So kind of that unique top-down view and bottom-up view of how it all came together. And I think that really set me up on this trajectory.
Now that makes sense. You referenced the IPO, and for most companies, an IPO is the biggest event in its history, and certainly to this point, it's the biggest event in Domo's history. But fundamentally, it's an event.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
The thing is, you've got sort of one type of business before the IPO, and then you're public, and it is a different type of business. So, in your role, you weren't yet the CFO, but you were in a leadership type of position and a critical part of the team. How do you sort of make that transition from small, fun, entrepreneurial type company to, yeah, we want to keep that, but we're a public company and there's just different realities that we're dealing with right now?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of that is getting alignment on the metrics ahead of going public. And what are our key metrics, and what are the things that we are going to report on publicly every quarter? Developing, processes around how those are calculated, developing the definitions of those metrics, and helping everyone in the company understand how their team and their department plays a part in those key metrics, and having everyone be on the same page. And that's really important going into that, so that when you become public, the sales team knows how what they do plays into, for us, billings is a really important top line metric. And that's kind of a combination of the new business we book in a quarter and our retention rate and what we're able to build to our existing customers. So new and existing customers, and making sure the customer success team knows how critical it is that we have a good retention rate, and the sales team knows what their target is that they need to hit. And when you bring it all together, we hit our numbers that we're committing to publicly. So getting that in place ahead of time and helping people know what they're being held to afterward. And then as far as kind of maintaining that fun environment, yeah, I mean, it's just, there's plenty of ways you can keep doing that. Once you become publicly traded, right, there's a little bit more of a spotlight on your numbers and your costs and your margins. And so it's easy sometimes to maybe just completely cut out all the fun stuff. But, we tried to, there were some things that kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. We found plenty of areas where we were able to, hey, it doesn't really cost us that much to have this activity. And, this other thing we do every year, it's just everybody loves it. It's kind of part of our culture. We're definitely keeping that. You have to make sure you have a balanced view of it. It's maybe easy for a CFO to say, well, just cut it all. It's not, it's not necessary. But understanding what people felt like was part of our cultural identity and making sure we kept those things, I think was really critical in keeping that culture alive, even in the post-public world.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So I want to chat. You mentioned Josh James, and he's not only the CEO, he's the founder of the company.
Correct.
And it's interesting because there was a study by Accenture. It's a few years ago now, not that long, but 7 or 8 years ago. And they concluded that the most important relationship within a company is that between the CEO and the CFO. And since you're both guys, I can say you're playing Batman to his Superman. But what is that relationship with Josh like, and how do you maintain that professional strategic partnership that I'm going to go on a limb and he's going to say it's his most important professional relationship, and I'm sure it's yours as well?
Yeah, I feel like that's been the biggest, focus for me, is making sure that he and I have a strong relationship. Because I grew up here, I've been here for 10 years. I understand the business. I've got a deep understanding of business. I understand how the numbers work, and I've got a really good handle on a lot of things. But this CFO-CEO relationship was something that's new to me. And so figuring that out as we go, right? But Josh has been fantastic. He's been you mentioned like mentors, they're important, right? Josh has certainly been a major mentor for me and continues to be. But as I've spent time thinking about what makes our relationship successful, a big part of it is just him feeling like I'm on his team, and vice versa, right? I think sometimes I've seen situations where the CFO feels like they have to push back almost out of principle on every decision that the CEO is trying to make. And so I feel like it's something where they have to feel like you're on their team. You have to feel like you're on their team as well. So that's been, one thing that I've really worked on is, hey, when he has an idea, something that he wants to try, he's a visionary. He's not afraid to shake things up and do something a little bit different. I'm open to it, right? And we can have an open conversation about it. If you're the kind of person that shoots things down immediately, like, people are going to stop coming to you. So having that open dialogue, being open-minded, being willing to hear people out, a lot of the ingredients that make a successful relationship anywhere factor into having a strong relationship with a CEO. for
Yeah.
sure.
Did I imagine that? Or did I compare you guys to Batman and Superman? I
No,
don't know
that's
what made those words come out of my mouth.
hey, I liked it. I thought maybe you didn't want to. Maybe you thought Robin would be like maybe potentially like everybody wants to be Batman. Nobody really wants to be Robin. So maybe you stepped it. I feel like you just elevated both of those roles and went Batman, Superman, which I thought was great.
There
So
you go. Yeah. So, but it's interesting what you said about the relationship, because I remember my first CFO job. CEO is I'm not like, I'm a pretty basic person. I'm not hard to figure out. I'm not very complex. It's good and bad, but it's just what it is. But the boss was, and one of his best friends was actually on the board of directors. And this guy, he was an All-American football player, Division III All-American or Division II maybe, or whatever it was, at Columbia. And plus he graduated from Columbia with like a 3.9 GPA type of thing. So so this guy told me about Bruce. He said, just remember there are two Bruces. There's the scholar, the guy who went to Columbia and got a 3.9, and then there's the dumb jock, plays football and loves keg parties. Always remember which one you're dealing with at a given moment,
Mhm.
and remember they both have their role. And it sounds like, well, you wouldn't have put it in those terms. It sounds like you do have that sort of thing. You understand them as people, and
Yeah,
you're able to sort of make him be his best version of himself, but grounded in the reality that CFO brings.
absolutely. There's a human element to every relationship, regardless of the titles or reporting structure that's involved. And I think that's just so critical to always be focused on that human element, because that's really what drives our behavior, right? As humans, is those kind of core foundational, feelings and motivations and mindsets. So you definitely have to always keep that stuff in mind.
So given your work at Domo, an analytics company, I would assume more so than your average CFO, you're expected to sort of have an analytical mindset and framework when you go to the job. So, but does it create any pressure? And do you think your job is, if not unique, at least a little bit rare relative to some other CFO jobs?
Yeah, I think so. Probably in a couple different ways. I think you're right. I think there's clearly an expectation here that I'm using data and that I'm using, as real time of data as possible, because we have access to our platform, that's what it's designed to do. But then also, given that I've been here for 10 years, and in the earlier part of my career at Domo, I was actually building content. I was connecting to the data sources. I was combining them, doing calculations, building out these dashboards and data products that I was sharing, for myself and sharing out with other people in the company, sharing with the executive team. So I've kind of been part of that end-to-end journey as well myself, which gives me I think a deeper appreciation of that as well. But yeah, there's definitely pressure to be using data here, but it's a joy. I mean, for me, using Domo is one of my favorite parts of my job, and being able to get into the data and spend less time gathering and asking for data and more time just looking at it and figuring out what it's telling me and making sure we're taking the right action. I think in any business situation, you've got to have the data to make the decisions. And then you've got to, once you have the data, getting that in place and actually getting boots on the ground and getting initiatives in place and getting them working, seeing what works, what doesn't. And when it starts to work, leaning in and getting the result you want. The second part of that is actually the hardest part. Getting the results and making changes, that's the hardest part. The data, that shouldn't consume much of your time at all, because you need as much of your time as possible to go put those things into practice and drive results. So if you're having to spend a significant pound of your time just getting the data, asking questions about it, finding mistakes and not trusting it and having people go back and work on it over and over again, that is just precious time wasted that should be spent driving results in the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, yeah. And, I forget who said it, but it was a good quote. It's like, data will not replace human judgment, but it'll make human judgment a lot more effective. And, one doesn't replace the other, right? Nor would you use judgment over data. You sort of need to look, you're a smart fella. You've got 2 decades worth of experience that tells you this. Let's use the data to make sure that, yeah, my theories hold water or make sense, and sort of open your eyes to things. And it sounds like that's sort of the approach that your entire company must be doing.
That's right. I don't think it's necessarily different from what other companies are doing, but we're able to short circuit a lot of it and get to the applying human judgment piece faster and more effectively than maybe in some situations where the data is harder to get to.
Makes sense. So, this generative AI thing, you heard it from me first. It's going to be big someday. That's my takeaway. If you only take away one thing from this podcast, that would
Okay.
be so. But no,
Love it.
but how are you using AI internally? Because in the past, technologies have been reduce costs, save time, create certain efficiencies. But this is a game changer, right? The game changer.
Absolutely a game changer. And we are just on the very, tip of it, the very front end of it. I'm really excited to see where it goes. What's great about it for us is, to effectively deploy AI, you have to have data, especially in a business environment. You've got to have the data. And the data is scattered, right? It's in different places. You've got to be able to pull that all together. You've got to be able to create usable, meaningful data sets that you can apply AI on top of. And not only that, you've got to govern it, right? It's got to be secure, and you have to have controls over who can use it and on what data they can use it on, and make sure that whatever model you're applying isn't going to grab that data and push it outside of your organization beyond the firewall to go train their model on. And Domo makes it really easier for people to do that. And we've, yesterday was our earnings call. We gave the example, one of our customers was able to build an AI agent in our product in like 37 minutes. So just that speed to value and being able, once you have Domo and you've got all your data in there, to be able to go apply AI on top of that so quickly is really a game changer. And whether it's Domo or another platform, just being able to harness the power of that generative AI and be able to direct it to go do specific tasks, give it instructions and say, hey, go look at my forecast data, come back and tell me if anything looks off. Go look at my GL, tell me if there's any transactions that I should probably go review because they fall outside of these predetermined criteria and endless things, right? I mean, that's two of like a million things that it could go do. But I'm really excited to see how we're able to evolve with it internally. It's exciting to see what our customers are doing with it as well.
No, that's exciting. And you took my next question from me, though, Todd. I was going to ask if you could give me an example of how one of your customers is using Domo or AI. So, but you said 37 minutes.
Yeah. We had a customer. They sent an email to one of our sales reps here, and so we have this 10-part AI webinar series we're doing. They were watching a recording of one of the first webinars, following along, and we were sort of walking them through step by step how to create an agent in Domo. And they were so excited that they were able to create a meaningful process, and deploy AI into that process, that they sent us a note and said, hey, 37 minutes into the webinar, I had a working AI agent. And they were just thrilled beyond belief. So
it takes me 32 minutes to cook breakfast, for gosh sake. That's crazy.
Yeah. So no, it's exciting.
So cool. So I like to ask people this, particularly who are CPAs, and you're a CPA to this day, I suspect.
I inactive at this point, but okay. Yes.
Yeah. You're not going to be doing audits or anything like that. So, and obviously a rules-based system, critical on so many levels. But to communicate with non-financial people, we rely upon KPIs. And I'm curious, what are some of the most meaningful KPIs that you use, to explain business results to the people who aren't maybe as sophisticated in finance and accounting as you are?
Yeah, no, for us, it's, I mentioned it earlier, but the recurring revenue model, the SaaS model, it really boils down to ARR, right? Like annual recurring revenue. So you've got this book of business, call it $300 million that's going to renew every year. And, it comes down to retention and the new business you're bringing in. So first and foremost, you want to retain as much of that recurring revenue as you can every year. And so that what we call gross retention, our retention metric, super important. If we're retaining 90 plus or 95+% of that base, that's incredible, because that's less of the hole in the bucket, right? You can compare it to a bucket. And if you have a retention problem, you've got a big hole in the bucket. Water's leaking out, and you're putting water in the top with your new business. But if there's more coming out of the bottom than it's going in the top, you're gonna have less water, right? Your business is gonna shrink. So you've got to make sure your retention rates are strong. You got to make sure your new business performance is strong, and that helps the business grow. So really, in a nutshell, those are the two biggest things we're focused on in terms of driving growth in the business: is better retention and better performance on the new business acquisition.
That's fantastic. So, yeah, I grew up as an accountant too, and I was a pretty good one. But it was difficult when I got into leadership roles to translate GAAP, which nobody wanted to hear, into something meaningful. Yeah, it took me a little bit to get KPIs. So, but one thing you've had a really interesting career, particularly for somebody, you've only worked for 2 companies in your professional career, yet you've had some really, I don't want to say unique, but some very interesting, some very varied experiences with, two of the best run companies within their own industries, right? I mean, doesn't get any better than EY. And I say that as a KPMG alum, and certainly Domo, what you've accomplished there speaks for itself. But, how do you when you look at the nature of financial leadership and how it's changing? And, I go back to CFOs where the best accountant would become a CFO. I know that wasn't the case when you got your first CFO job. But how do you see financial leadership changing going forward? It's been a heck of a run, and it's certainly going to change more and more in the years
Yeah,
ahead.
I think it will for sure. This has been very apparent to me, especially working with Josh, who's a very visionary, forward-thinking CEO. He wants me to be a strategic sounding board. He wants me to be able to, hey Todd, let's go come into my office, let's sit down and let's talk. And he'll want to talk, strategy, and he'll want to talk about, hey, how do you think we can drive more revenue? What kind of changes can we make to have better retention? And how can we drive more, RPO? How can we have more multi-year contracts? What can we do to harness these great customer relationships we have and really drive our business forward? And then, like I said, we had our earnings call yesterday. That whole process of preparing for an earnings call, determining what we're going to say in our prepared remarks and what should we say, what shouldn't we say, what metrics should we focus on, which ones should we not. He's looking to me to help guide him through that and provide, hey, well, here's one area I think would be really good to focus on. Here's a change I think we can make in the business that would really drive the results we want and get the reaction we want from the street. So it's not surprisingly, it's evolving into a more strategic role, not just hey, what are the numbers? Hand off the numbers and then we're done, right? So I have to have what that means for me is I have to have really strong people on my team to do that, right? I've got to have a really strong controller who's making sure all the numbers are good. I've got to have a really strong head of FP&A that's making sure our financial forecast is solid, and that we don't have it, that we've got something we can rely on. So when I'm in a conversation with the CEO and I've got to pull up our forecast and start, looking at where things are headed, I can feel really confident that my FP&A team has something reliable that I can use, and that we're not going to make a bad decision because it's off. So yeah, it's evolved to a more strategic role, and that puts a little more or a lot more pressure, I think, on my lieutenants to make sure that they're performing at a high level.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I'm curious, you mentioned the Josh wanting you to be more strategic. Is that a perception shared throughout the C-suite? Because I think CEOs now recognize the strategic value that a good CFO can bring. I'm not certain that the rest of the C-suite is necessarily bought into that. But what's your experience been?
You're asking how the rest of the C-suite would view the CFO? Would they view them?
Yeah, your VP of sales and engineering or whatever.
Yeah. I think to a large extent they do here. And I think that's really, if they don't, I would feel like that's something that a CFO would want to address. For me, especially as I thought about our conversation today, what things I would bring up, I think just relationships are so critical, not just with the CEO, but the rest of the executive team. You've got to have those deep relationships. And as you do that, you get more and more opportunities to work with them where they come to you and say, hey, Todd, I'm struggling with this. What do you think? What do you think we should do here? And then the more of those natural, organic opportunities you have to have those conversations, the more they will view you as a strategic partner and someone they can go to for advice. So I think that is something that if they don't view the CFO that way, it's something that can be fixed and something that can be addressed, and I think should be addressed by expanding those relationships.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I remember my first job, I was a smart ass, but I called the CFO and I was 20 years old or something like that. But the CFO was one of those old school folks. He just said no to everything. I called him the CF no. Unfortunately for me, it spread throughout the company. So I thought I got away with it, but I didn't really. So anyway, this has been fun. And one thing I always like to end on an underrated aspect, because the CFO job's really hard, and people who haven't been a CFO don't appreciate the level of stress and responsibility. So what do you do outside of work to have fun and achieve that elusive work-life balance?
Yeah, no, it is elusive, getting more elusive. But no, I have a family. I've got a wife and 4 kids, ages 4 to 11. So we had a lot of family activities all the time that keep me busy. And when I'm able to get out and do things we're a big skiing family. Just this last year, I taught my 4-year-old how to ski. So now all 4 of my kids are skiing to varying degrees of competency, but they're all skiing. And if I do get a rare chance to get out on my own, in years past, I've spent a lot of time backcountry skiing, which is actually a hobby I truly enjoy, not just because of the exercise and and getting out, away from, kind of out of the noise and out of the fray and into the mountains where it's nice and quiet and peaceful. But it's actually, you have to have a broad knowledge of a lot of different things, right? There's avalanche safety, right? You got to be careful you're not going to get buried in an avalanche. And so you've got to have your eye on the weather, watching the weather patterns, reading the avalanche forecast. When you're out there traveling, looking at different hazards and evaluating your route and avoiding danger. And so for me, it's also kind of the mental, exercise. It's kind of I don't know, it's exciting for me to go plan a trip and successfully navigate through different terrain and choose the right day at the right time to find the right snow conditions and do it safely. It's a really fun hobby and something that a lot of people here in Utah enjoy, but it's certainly been a good source of work-life balance for me.
Yeah, what do you call that? Avalanche safety, huh? That's a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Enough people have been harmed. Have you ever seen an avalanche?
Nothing big. I've seen some smaller ones, and I've seen the aftermath of some bigger ones. Unfortunately, we do have a few fatalities most years here from it, so it's definitely a real thing. But yeah, it's also, if you're educated and make smart decisions, you can go out and enjoy the backcountry very safely.
Yeah, I saw what I was told was I was assured it was a small one up in the Canadian Rockies, and as you might imagine, they don't have them in Boston. But it scared me. It's
Oh yeah,
it's a small one.
it's no joke.
Yeah.
And they'll snap full grown trees, just snap them in half like toothpicks.
Yeah. On the other hand, it was weird because it was actually, I was far enough that none of us were in danger, and it was strangely beautiful. But although, once I got over, because I heard it, and I thought, like, I was thinking like a bomb or a dynamite or something. I was surprised how loud they were, but interesting. So cool. Well, anyway, and that's great that you have 4 kids and you're able to find time to do all of those things with them. Are any of them better at skiing than you yet?
They're getting close. My 11-year-old, she's incredibly daring. She'll take off down a run where it's steep, it's bumpy, it's icy, and she'll just bail off the side and go for it. And I'll follow her down, but yeah, she's getting there. She's getting there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun to see your kids progress like that.
Yeah, by 16, she's going to be beating the old man.
100%. There's no doubt about it.
That's great. So anyway, this has been a lot of fun, and I know you've got a lot going on. But so my final question for you is, what's the advice that you would give people a little bit earlier in their career than you, sort of the next generation of CFOs?
Yeah, it's really 2 things, Jack. One, I'd say relationships, and I know I brought that up a lot today, but it's just so critical. And as I was coming up through my career, I always just understood that the more relationships I had, the deeper relationships I had up and down and across the organization, it could only benefit me. So I always went out of my way to get to know people outside of my organization, the sales team, the customer success team, the consulting team, everybody, right? HR, legal, the executives, right? If I had chances to interact with executives, I made sure I took advantage of those and they knew who I was. And if there's anything I could do to provide value to them, I would take advantage of it. So relationships, number 1. Number 2, you've got to always be on the lookout for those big moments, those big career defining moments. 1, you got to see when they're coming, and 2, be ready to take advantage of them. So a quick example I'll give for me. So this was several years ago. We had a new CFO. He happened to start right before an earnings call. And so it became incumbent on me to sort of get him up to speed on where we were as a company, what the forecast looked like, what I would recommend for guidance, how we should address the earnings call, the tone we should have. And because of my close involvement with the earnings call process up until that point, I knew I was ready for it, but I also made sure that I was extra ready for that meeting. We actually met over a weekend. We were here for a Saturday and a Sunday. It was basically me, the CEO, and the CFO, our head of IR, and maybe 1 or 2 other people. But they were looking to me to explain the model, explain the guidance, give that suggestion. And I made sure I was ready, and I made sure I showed up the right way and took advantage of it. And I really think that was one of the key moments where people thought, okay, I think Todd could take that next step and become the CFO. So I would just encourage that, those that have that aspiration and want to progress in their career, identify the key moments and be ready to take advantage.
Well, I think that is extraordinary advice. So, and as I said earlier, you get a lot going on, 4 kids, a very full career. So grateful for your time. And I'd just like to give you the final word.
Yeah, no, final word. Again, I'll come back to relationships. I just encourage everyone to take stock of where they're at with their relationship building across their company and find ways to strengthen those. And it's more than even just a work thing, right? I think just in life in general, you see these studies about the happiest people in the world. people that have relationships, right? I mean, friends and family and people that love them and people they love. So for me, that's, as I think back on my career and on my life, that's really what it comes down to. And I'd encourage everyone out there to take some time to do the same.
Thank you for listening to this episode. To continue your exploration of this role that focuses on strategy, leadership, finance, and technology, listen to more episodes of the show at rockstarcfos.com. Join this revolution, episode by episode. Push yourself to achieve great things and unlock the best opportunities available to you. CFOs are creating a legacy, and it's time for you to leave your own unique imprint on the world today. That's all for now. See you on the next one.